There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Along with me, Tim Dennis. Hello, Tim.
Howdy.
The Supernatural News Desk is a poppin' this week, and we've got a lot of actualities, a lot of stories that I want to go to the actual audio for, because in some instances, you know, when I'm reading it, you don't get the feel for who's saying this and what the inflection is. Are they tongue-in-cheek? Are they being serious? Is there some gravitas? You like how I said that? Gravitas
I do.
To these tales. So we've got a lot of news. So I'm going to be up front. Very little Parashare this week. We do have a brand new Theater of the Mind from our buddy Jason Offutt, who I think was one of the first people to bring us a Black-Eyed Kids story back in the day. But Jason brought us a story that he recorded himself. Tim has put together the music and effects. This is a cool tale. That's going to appear a little bit later on in the episode. But let's jump to it. I want to mention this first story before we start getting into the spate of UFO type topics that have been coming up this week, Tim.
Okay.
Public ghost hunts are among events slated for Mansfield in May. That's right. New projects, new things to do, new events, and new routines are happening in Mansfield, Ohio for the remainder of the month. The calendar of events is here to be a resource for shaking it up with craft fairs, vintage markets, a taco crawl, arts, and live entertainment is just some of the stuff going on there. But, of course, I'm bringing it up because I will be there all weekend long at the Ohio State Reformatory, the Mansfield Reformatory. We've been there numerous times doing ghost hunts, and I've always had a great time. So if you've ever wanted to hunt ghosts, this is your chance to come on out. Don't miss your chance to get up close and personal with the paranormal at the historic Ohio State Reformatory. You can hunt for ghosts. You can go yourself. There's public gatherings this weekend. There's something cool. And their public hunts are tailored to each participant's experience level to make sure everyone has a great hunting experience. And you can learn even more from paranormal experts at the Parapsychon 2021, which takes place May 22nd and the 23rd. That's this coming weekend, featuring paranormal teams, psychic healers, authors, speakers, celebrities, and more. I will be a part of that. I'd love for you guys to come out. Just go check out the Mansfield Reformatory, Ohio State Reformatory website. And here's a cool thing, Tim. It's not like a standard paranormal conference where you pay for a ticket and attend all of this. Mm-hmm. They have basically just set it up so that this weekend, if you pay to come take their tour of Mansfield Reformatory, you will, in fact, get to be a participant in the event. Now, I think the private ghost hunts at night are sold out, but the speakers are available, and there's a lot of great speakers that are going to be a part of this event. I'm part of it. I know our buddies from Kindred Spirits are going to be there. Ben Hansen's going to be there. I think the Ghost Brothers are on hand for this event as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. You can come on out, get out there. Don't make any excuses. We need to get out and start living our lives again. And this is going to be a great opportunity to do that. So that's what's going to kick off the news for today. Now, here's an interesting article that will lead us into this conversation we're going to have today, Tim. CBS News reports that 2 in 3 Americans think there is intelligent life on other planets. Most Americans think we're not alone in the cosmos, so a belief that has grown over the past few years. And most of those who hold this opinion also think we're going to make contact with intelligent extraterrestrial life within the next 100 years. And on the topic of UFOs, most think the U.S. government already knows more than they're telling the general public. 66% of Americans now believe that there is intelligent life on other planets, which is an increase of 10 percentage points since the last time CBS News asked this question back in 2017. As recently as 2010, fewer than half of Americans believe this was so. That's a pretty substantial tick. You know, you're seeing a really big groundswell of interest. Moreover, a third of those who believe in sentient extraterrestrial life think that human contact with beings from another world will occur within their lifetime, including 10% of Americans who volunteer that we already have. Another 24% think that such contact will be made within the next 100 years, and 36% think it just won't happen until further into the future, while 6% think that while there is intelligent life on other planets, we will never have contact with it. Though few Americans say they believe aliens have contacted us already, many more at least entertain the possibility. As a matter of fact, 51% of Americans think UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, also known now as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, Tim. Yeah, it's unidentified aerial phenomena. I don't know if I mentioned it, but it's UAP stands for unidentified aerial phenomena. Phenomena. So 51% of Americans think UFOs or unidentified flying objects might sometimes be the result of alien spacecrafts visiting Earth. This rises to 71% among those who believe intelligent life on other planets already exist. And most Americans think that whatever UFOs are, the U.S. government knows more than it's telling to the general public. Just 20% think the government has told everything it knows about UFOs. Now, this poll was conducted by telephone between March 23rd and March 28th on 2021, so just a month and a half, 2 months ago, among a random sample of 1,009 adults nationwide. Data collection was conducted on behalf of CBS News by SSRS of Glen Mills, Pennsylvania. Phone numbers were dialed from samples of both standard landline and cell phones. The poll employed a random digit dial methodology for the landline sample. A respondent was randomly selected from all adults in the household. For the cell samples, interviews were conducted with the person who answered the phone. So I just wanted to tell you how that went about and what they were able to actually do to get that information. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of buzz in the news. Celebrities are stepping forward. We've been talking about it. We talked about Demi Lovato, Miley Cyrus, and others that have seen UFOs. Well, Demi Lovato's put her feet to work on this, Tim. She's going to actually go beat the pavement in search of aliens. She's putting her money where her mouth is, and she's going to be part of a new series. She's going to be fronting this alien documentary series, going out in search of extraterrestrial life. It'll be part of the Peacock network, so people can tune in. She's set to hunt aliens in the new documentary series. The sober singer will head out in search of alien life for the docuseries, officially titled Unidentified with Demi Lovato, which will air on the streaming service owned by NBC Universal. Now, according to press release, the series, which does not yet have a release date, will follow Demi and her skeptical best friend Matthew and her sister Dallas as they attempt to uncover the truth about UFO phenomena. Music manager and film producer Scooter Braun is executive producing the series, which will see Demi consult with extraterrestrial experts and interview eyewitnesses to uncover secret government reports and conduct tests at known UFO hotspots. The official statement from Peacock also promises Demi is a true believer in alien life and wants to embark on the courageous adventure of a lifetime to convince her close friends and you, the viewers, that not only are there intelligent beings beyond Earth, but that they are already here. Fans can look forward to interviews with scientists and presumed alien abductees, while the 28-year-old singer conducts experiences and experiments to try to make peace with the aliens and ultimately save ourselves. Unidentified with Demi Lovato will mark the second documentary series Demi has worked on this year after her YouTube original series, Demi Lovato, Dancing with the Devil, premiered on March 23rd. The series discussed her near-fatal drug overdose in 2018, heroin addiction, and surviving sexual assault, as well as her journey to better health. And Demi recently revealed she is still living with the lasting effects of her overdose, which she says has left her with brain damage. Now, I think it's interesting that they have to incorporate that part into this article as we talk about her going on the hunt for UFOs. It feels like it's a backhanded, oh, she's going to go out, she's going to do this. But guys, she's admitting she's got brain damage. I don't think we should focus that much. And listen, I'm all for different faces being put forward to engage people, to make them talk. Whether you think, God, who the hell cares if it's Demi Lovato? I don't care who's leading the hunt. I just want to see what they're able to prove and uncover. So I'm fascinated by what she's going to do, and I'll be watching this, and hopefully we'll have Demi on the show to talk about her experiences and why this is such a fascination for her.
There's another press release I saw too this month that ties in May with Mental Health Awareness Month. There's an author who has a book out there talking about their experiences with a mental health breakdown and how they saw aliens, but it was the result of this mental health breakdown. So it was something I didn't run past you because I know it would have been an automatic no, first of all.
Oh, no, that's not true. I'm always interested in what science has to tell us, as long as they're not doing it in a condescending way, like, oh, well, obviously you've got to be mental to see these things. I'm fascinated by that, so you can always share them with me. The problem with sometimes the scientific articles go on and on for 8 pages, so I don't always read those, or I'll just read a chunk of them because I don't want to go 8 pages into all the theoretics and dynamics that they talk about.
This is an actual person who released a book saying that they had a breakdown and saw aliens, why they had the breakdown, and truly believe it was because they had the breakdown that they saw the aliens. So,
well, give me the press release. I'd love to talk with that guest and maybe have him on the show.
Okay,
because that's a different perspective. I personally believe something big is coming, Tim. Something massive, and the fact that a lot of the news stories we're about to cover have all broken in the last 3 to 4 days tells me something. If you go on the front page of MSN News, Yahoo News, a lot of these, you'll see the amazing amount of stories. Now, some of them, again, a little lighter. Some want to expose the mistakes that have been made in the past, which I totally get. CBS News, 60 Minutes just did a whole expose on UFOs, and that was fascinating. One of the key articles, and go ahead, I'll let you.
Oh, I was going to say, I did watch that the other day. Actually, it was the other day. I watched the 60 Minutes feature and the 60 Minutes overtime feature on UAPs and the two members of the military that had run into them. And go ahead with what you're going to say about it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what makes it fascinating to me. That and I have a story, and I know people are going to be pissed off. I'm doing the ultimate tease here. I have a story I have to tell you off the air.
Okay.
Somebody that you and I both love and respect has some insight. So, but it's somebody I cannot talk about at this point. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
But CBS News reports in this article, which will launch us, we've got a lot of audio we're going to be playing soon. But former Navy pilot says he regularly detected UFOs, and he's calling them a security risk. Former Navy Lieutenant Ryan Graves says he and other members of his FA-18 fighter squadron detected strange, maneuverable, and unidentifiable objects flying in restricted airspace southeast of Virginia Beach. And this is the part that blows my flippin' mind. They didn't just see it in a one-off. They saw them nearly every day for 2 years, beginning in 2015. So 700 days they saw these craft. The sightings became so commonplace, he says, pilots and their crews began to take them for granted. Graves is calling those objects a threat to security in a 60 Minutes interview. Graves is one of the several current and former military members who have spoken publicly about what the Pentagon now calls unidentified aerial phenomena, or the UAP. These documented sightings of UAP, recorded on gun camera video and photos taken by U.S. service members, have been analyzed by the Department of Defense for years. But the government only grudgingly acknowledged the internal efforts after unclassified videos of UAP were leaked to the New York Times in 2017. Now, the Senate Intelligence Committee has ordered the Director of National Intelligence and the Secretary of Defense to compile a report on unidentified aerial phenomena that is to be delivered in June. I'm worried, frankly. You know, if these were tactical jets from another country that were hanging out up there, this would be a massive issue, Graves tells Bill Whitaker in an interview airing on 60 Minutes. But because it looks slightly different, we're not willing to actually look at the problem in the face. We're happy to just ignore the fact that these are out there watching us every day. Graves says pilots who have seen UAP speculate they could be a secret U.S. technology, an enemy spy platform, or something else entirely. Watching one of the unclassified videos, he says, this is a difficult one to explain. You have rotation. You have extremely high altitudes. You have propulsion, right? I don't know. I don't know what it is, frankly, he goes on to say. I would say, the highest probability is it's a threat observation program, Graves says. He wouldn't rule out the possibility they could be Russian or Chinese technology. Now, Lou Elizondo, a former Department of Defense official who investigated UAPs for nearly a decade, says these vehicles display technology far superior to anything in any nation's inventory. Imagine a technology that can do 600 to 700 G-forces, that can fly 13,000 miles an hour, that can even evade radar and can fly through air and water and possibly space. Oh, and by the way, has no obvious signs of propulsion, no wings, no control surfaces, and yet still can defy the natural effects of Earth's gravity. That's precisely what's being seen and reported. Now, Senator Marco Rubio from Florida man, so we have to take it with a grain of salt, Tim, has been seeing classified briefings on UAP and called for a detailed analysis of unidentified aerial phenomena. Last December, while still head of the Senate's Intelligence Committee, he asked the Director of National Intelligence and the Pentagon to present Congress with an unclassified report by June 2021. Now, the 60 Minutes report aired this last Sunday. I've got it recorded. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. Before we start in these actualities and audio, Tim, they're seeing this for over 2 years. They've got these black and white gray footage of the craft. If it was that close and it's being considered a threat or a potential threat, did they go after them? Did they send Black Hawk jets or helicopters or anything to go explore and see what these were, possibly even get better footage? Because unfortunately, what they're showing me is the equivalent of shaky, grainy Bigfoot footage. And you'd think with the military, we'd have something much better quality by now.
When you watch the story, the answer is yes, and it'll chill you a little bit. There are two pilots that they interview in the story. I mean, I don't want to ruin the story for you either, but okay. Essentially they were flying their jets and got to a submersible, and right. I don't know if I should ruin the story for you or not.
Well, we're here talking about it. I mean, just give me the ballpark of it. But they definitely saw something they cannot identify.
Not only
it broke the plane of water as well.
It was in the water initially in the sky. They went to follow it. It went into the water, but when they went to follow it, it came at them, and the jet was in a position where it couldn't pull up. It looked like it was going to collide with one of the jets, and it simply disappeared.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah. And when they got, now this is the part that, when they were interviewing there's a lieutenant commander and there was another commander that they were interviewing, male and female. And when they got back to their flight deck, they were ridiculed. They were both ridiculed by the entire staff, basically having seen, little green men or whatever. But they were trying to take it very seriously, and they were trying to, report what they had seen to their superiors. But this guy was just simply shook, because he said, as he had described it, the thing had gone back and forth, side to side at a moment's notice, and had made turns and basically moved in directions that
defy logic and science, right?
Well, yeah, that basically no craft could make. And when he went to follow it, rather than it just simply going away from him. It came at him, like straight at him, and in a direction where he thought they were going to collide, and then it just disappeared before they made contact.
That's crazy. That's great. Do you think it might be some kind of form of projection as opposed to an actual craft? But then sonar wouldn't ping off it. Radar wouldn't pick it up if it was just a light projection of some sort.
I don't know. They didn't see the thing. The thing with this interview, of course, you only have so much time, in 60 minutes to. Right. So they don't get that in depth. They don't cover that. It's.
Well, we're going to reach out. I'm going to keep trying to push this. I want answers. I'm fascinated by this, and I know we're a month away from what the government's going to release, and we've actually got some people weighing in on that in today's actualities. But before we get deep into the news aspects of this, there was a couple of interesting stories that popped up. Patton Oswalt, the comedian and actor, was on Jimmy Kimmel and actually came on and he's talking about his new show MODOK, which is a kind of a goofy Marvel villain that they're doing this stop motion animation cartoon for. Mm-hmm. But then Jimmy throws him the question, dude, shouldn't we be talking about the UFOs? And we've got that. It starts at about 5 minutes and 9 seconds in, Tim. Yep. Ends at about 7:11. Let's go ahead and listen to Patton Oswalt explanation of his dad seeing a UFO.
Okay.
Patton, did you watch 60 Minutes last night?
I did.
I mean, I can't, I think 80% of our staff had no idea what I was talking about. Am I nuts when I say this is what we should all be focused on right now?
No, listen, I agree with what Shaq said earlier. And by the way, I'm broadcasting. I'm in his pocket right now. I'm in his shirt pocket. I have never. Here's what is frustrating for me. I've never personally seen a UFO or a cryptid or a ghost or experienced a time shift or anything like that. But I'm very, very open to that existing, and I'm surrounded by people, friends, and family who have seen and encountered UFOs. My dad was a test pilot in the Marines all through the 60s and 70s, and when he was stationed at El Toro, he said talk to any pilot, they see all kinds of weird stuff up there, but they just don't report it because they don't want to go into a crank file, they don't want to see. So he said he was on a test flight and he saw a bunch of objects that he said they looked like glowing balls of energy in these round metal cages, and they were keeping track with the jets, and they would do these turns that you couldn't do under those G-forces and would disappear. And when he came down and talked to his base commander and said, hey, my squad saw, and the base commander went, were they metal cages with energy balls in them? And he's like, yeah. He goes, do you want to report them? He's like, no, I don't. And then the commander just went, good, fine, and then walked away.
Wow.
So I mean, I'm just saying this new, what is it called? ATIP? That's the new thing that Congress is doing to look at all these reports.
Yeah.
Are they going to also go back into Project Blue Book from the 70s where they were really going into is all that stuff locked away or what's going on?
Well, I'll call you after the show and let you know what's going on.
Okay.
By the way, speaking about a ball of energy inside a metal cage, I mean, it's MODOK right there. That's what your dad was foreshadowing.
Oh, my, wait a minute. Oh, God. It's all happening. This is all coming together. Jimmy, I got to get out of the country. It's all coming together. I got to go.
Patton Oswalt, you can see all of the episodes of Marvel's MODOK streaming starting.
So that in itself is interesting. Unfortunately, they do the silly bit at the end to wrap it up, which kind of takes the potency for me away from the story that Patton had just shared.
Yeah.
I still think it's fascinating that, his father admits to seeing this and how it was treated. Now, we talked, of course, about the case. We've got a story. This is a little bit longer. Jeremy Corbell, Lou Elizondo, they all talk about this. And then a gentleman talks about his actual encounter from 1969. This comes to us from Fox News. Let's go ahead and play that audio, Tim.
So what you're telling me is that UFOs, unidentified flying objects, are real.
Bill, I think we're beyond that already. The government has already stated for the record that they're real. I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that.
I feel like this is a big story. In a year of big stories, it might be big that the United States government has acknowledged the existence of UFOs. We might finally start getting answers to videos like these that reportedly show UFOs flying through the sky. And this is as Congress has ordered the Pentagon to release a report on the sightings just next month. Maybe we'll find out what's going on in videos like this one just released by my next guest. It allegedly was taken off of a U.S. Navy stealth ship showing an UFO side to side, then mysteriously dipping into the water. Here now, Jeremy Corbell, the documentary filmmaker who released this new video, along with many others. Jeremy, great to have you on the program. I've watched your documentary on Bob Lazar. I'm excited to talk to you here today. So first of all, it's no longer a question of whether or not UFOs exist. It's a question of what are they? Are they something that reveals advanced technology of a foreign power, China or Russia, or are they otherworldly?
Absolutely. That's the crux of the question. Look, I obtained and released with my mentor in journalism, George Knapp, a number of videos and photos that show advanced aerospace craft that we now understand to be transmedium, meaning penetrating that space between the air and the sea without destruction. That's the power in what I recently released, which is that image that you see of that spherical UFO, which is unidentified. We don't know, but it was going into the water without destruction. These are interesting times, and it is a moment where we're going to get answers.
Yeah, the United States government seems to be sort of walking an interesting line, Jeremy. They're renaming UFOs, UAPs, whatever that's worth. And to your point on the technology, the level of G-force operation, the change of direction that we're watching here with these objects, the United States government has said that this technology is not consistent with the capabilities of any nation to our knowledge. So, as I said, 1 month from now, there's supposed to be a report as requested by the Senate. What do you expect to see in that, Jeremy?
Right. So we are witnessing, observing, picking up on every type of data that our military has, advanced aerospace vehicles that are able to outmaneuver our greatest warplanes. And they are penetrating, and there are incursions in our most restricted airspace around our nuclear weapons. This is something that the military is very interested in, and they've been lying to the American public. We now know that. 1969, Project Blue Book ended, but there were other UFO programs. So now we're at a place where we see these objects flying with impunity. You have Commander David Fravor with the Tic Tac UFO. You have all these pilots coming forward, and obviously to me, numerous individuals providing footage that have been confirmed by the Pentagon. So now, we do know UFOs are real. Now, what they are, maybe as well as I do. We all got to find out.
We do need to find out. To your point, these are credible, decorated fighter pilots, U.S. military personnel who have made these sightings, and this has now been acknowledged by the United States government. The question is, what are they? Jeremy, thanks so much for talking with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on.
You bet. Also here tonight, by the way, as this story moves from the realm of conspiracy into reality, we should at least let curiosity find and drive the way. Tom Reed, he's a man whose UFO incident is the first to be officially archived as historically true, in Tom's case, by the state of Massachusetts. Now, Tom, I would love for you to fill us in. In 1969, you had an encounter with a UFO. Tell us about that encounter.
Well, actually, it was two spheres and one, it looked like a disc, actually. Our family had come through a bridge in Sheffield, Massachusetts, and off to the left of the water, there was a round sphere. I would say it was probably around 30 feet round, and it kind of rose from the banks of the Satanic River and went behind a line of trees. We were in the car right next to it. I mean, not even 60 yards away from it. Off to the right, there was an orange sphere that was also over water, and they looked very much the same, except one was orange and one was white. And as we watched the white one, if you will, my mother continued to drive down this dirt road, and when we got to a clearing, she had stopped the car, put it in park, and we were all looking out the windows. It was a very hot night, and there was no white sphere anymore. We had never saw it again. But then what we saw was this large vessel that was probably, and I was very young, but my mother was 29, my grandmother was in her 40s. So collectively, we have never forgotten what this thing looked like. I mean, it was probably 100 yards in length. The craft itself was almost like a bronze with a tarnished bronze, if you will. It wasn't one solid color. The right side of it was emitting more of a red tone to it, and it just sat there, maybe 100 yards from our vehicle. And it sat there for quite some time, and we sat there and just looked at this thing. And to describe what it looked like, the center of it was very fat and wide. Mm-hmm. The top of it was much more shallow than the bottom. And so collectively, the larger part of this craft was the center of it. And it looked like a snakeskin, if you will. It almost had these weird, lines to it.
Did anything happen, Tom?
Yeah.
Did anything happen as you're sitting there witnessing this UFO?
Yeah, so when we first, I would say that these three pieces were actually communicating with each other in some way, because we felt like we were suddenly underwater. Everything seemed muted, almost like when you're in a pool and you hear a tapping sound. It echoes, but everything else is kind of faint. And that's how we all felt that way.
Right.
And then as my mother stopped to put the car in park, it was almost as if, my mother mentions the pressure change. We've been through hurricanes, so we know what the barometric pressure feels like. It's just completely silent. And then there was this eruption of katydids and crickets, and everything kind of came to life at the same time. So whatever this was not only affecting us,
but everything around you,
the surroundings.
Hey, Tom,
yes, exactly.
As part of this revelation, the Senate has asked the United States government to look into these types of phenomenon. They've restarted a program, I believe, that's called ATIP. But the ATIP is a Pentagon research division that is sort of the grandchild of something called Project Blue Book, which was an Air Force project back, I believe, from it was 1947 to 1969. Were you ever visited by the Air Force? Anybody from Project Blue Book back in those days?
No, but we did have some visitors at the restaurant. My mother owned a diner. There were people that came in. If I could take this somewhere else real quickly.
Real quickly, please.
During that time, there was Sprague Electric had actually been working on a space program right next to our diner. That's where their base was. And the goodwill message that went to the moon was made and manufactured right next to our diner. So when all this took place back in the Berkshires, the children and the locals, they were all seeing these crafts in September. And at that point, it was kind of like, did something happen? What is happening in this area? Right. And so the talk back then was really handled in our diner. And because of Sprague and GE and these other programs that were working with these space programs, we were kind of caught in the middle of what could be said so that other people's parents or relatives could not possibly lose their job over it.
I hear you, Tom, because this story, and I've got to run here, because this story for so long has existed in the realm of giggles and conspiracies, because this story so long has existed in the realm of dismissal. But what we're learning here, just through government confirmation alone, is these stories need to be taken more seriously going forward. And I appreciate you sharing your story with us today. By the way, Tom is part of an Unsolved Mysteries series. His story will be highlighted with a new story that will air on Netflix, showing exactly how much curiosity there is out there in these types of events right now.
I love that that's how they wrap this story up. Listen, in the past, it's all been tongue in cheek and with a roll of the eyes. We now have to focus on this and give it the attention that it needs. To me, that's an exciting aspect, Tim. I mean, when we started the show in 2006, every time you heard a news story about UFOs, what accompanied it?
Oh, the X-Files theme, and there's a little giggle and little green men and
all kind of tongue. Hey, little green men seem to be about. They're not doing that now. Again, Dave, it's Fox News. What do you expect? Oh, it's Inside Edition. It's listen. You can take it apart as much as you want. The fact is, news sources are jumping on it. Mainstream news sources, not just my Black Vault of Imagination.com or whatever crazy websites are out there you'll say is conspiratorial. They're taking this very seriously. We are as well here. Listen, we love this stuff. I've got another audio story, Tim. This one comes from Inside Edition, just released 3 or 4 days ago. What I like about this, though, is that they take the tact of looking at both sides, talking about a few stories that have hit the press and how impressive they were, but then were proven untrue when it came to them being an alien craft. Some they're still on the fence about. It's an interesting aspect. I like that aspect of it, and I wanted to show that we're willing to show both the skeptical and the possibility side of this storyline with this next one. So I'll be quiet. We'll take this one from Inside Edition.
These stories will have you questioning if life exists outside our universe. And if so, have aliens made contact with us?
This is a spacecraft.
But is it? A man in North Carolina caught this in 2018. It's a big silver aircraft hovering over a lake. The man who captured the image says he was convinced he was looking at a UFO.
There was nothing like that I'd ever seen before.
The video went viral, with many others hoping he was right. However, it turned out not to be an alien aircraft. It was just the Goodyear blimp. The company even confirmed it on social media, writing, "We don't want to get in the way of a good story, but that's definitely us." Sorry, space fans, not this time.
Check this out.
In 2016, these airport employees in Miami had no idea what they were looking at when a blue orb appeared in the sky. The ground crew posted videos of the phenomenon on social media, which drew comments like, "They are coming," and "Welcome to the world of aliens." But the truth was the opposite of an alien invasion.
3, 2, 1. Liftoff.
It turned out to be a rocket launched into space from Cape Canaveral, and it happened just before the sun came up, which is what experts say caused the beautiful blue orb.
That's what we're seeing, is the expanding gases coming out from the rocket lit up by sunrise.
Others also seem to think blue light signals an alien encounter.
It's flashing.
When the sky turned blue in Queens, New York in 2018, the locals got a little worried.
All I saw was blue, and then my lights flickered at home. So then when I went out, I saw from my back window, and I just saw blue fire.
The ominous glow could be seen for miles, and while it was spectacular to look at, people wanted answers. Some thought the worst.
And then I said to my husband, we are being attacked. This is a terrorist attack. All my neighbors start to run, just run.
It's like an alien attack.
But it wasn't terrorists or aliens. The blue glow was caused by explosions at a Con Edison power plant that were set off by a fire. No one was injured, but power was temporarily lost to the surrounding area, which included LaGuardia Airport. Alien enthusiasts were surely let down by this event.
Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly.
In 2020, the Pentagon released 3 videos of unidentified flying objects that were recorded by Navy pilots. The pilots can be heard trying to understand what they're looking at.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
3 videos taken in 2004 and 2015 had been circulating in the media for years after being leaked, although the Navy did confirm their authenticity. The Department of Defense reportedly said it released the videos to clear up any misconceptions that they were not real or that there are more to them.
There's look at that thing. It's rotating.
But what the videos captured remains a mystery. Inside Edition Stephen Fabian asked a former government intelligence official what they could be.
What could they be?
Yeah, great question. So we all want to know. I'd like to remind everybody, unidentified flying object doesn't mean alien spaceship. But we have to keep an open mind. The alien hypothesis is just a hypothesis at this point. Might be the Russians and Chinese. Could be perhaps some private industry somewhere. None of these hypotheses are comfortable, and they all seem low probability, and yet the facts are the facts.
The Department of Defense would only say that the objects remain unidentified. One place may hold answers to our many questions about life on other planets. Roswell, New Mexico was the site of mysterious activity in 1947, but that's about all we know.
I'm not really sure what happened, but obviously something happened.
Something crashed. Evidence shows that probably it was an extraterrestrial craft.
While the U.S. government contends that no alien activities occurred in Roswell in 1947, all kinds of conspiracy theories have been explored and still linger today. Debris reported near a military base in the town were from balloon-borne research projects. But many people still don't buy that explanation.
Back in 1947, if the government told you to shut up for national security reasons, you did it.
The UFO Museum in Roswell attracts people from all over the world to explore the many possibilities. While it doesn't provide any definitive answers, the fun really is in drawing your own conclusion.
The major draw of this museum is the mystery. Everyone loves the mystery, and this is one of the biggest mysteries in our history.
But some people say there's no doubt they have had alien encounters.
2006, Starboard Support starts, and people have a place to go for support. Thinking that you're completely insane and not being able to speak to somebody, that's why we do what we do.
Members of Starborn Support gather to share their stories of alien abduction. It's a safe and welcoming place for them to share their experiences, which they say very few people can relate to.
One time I had a young lady that had just moved in with me. One night they came, took me, and in the process of them returning me back, they woke her up, at which point I was being levitated.
For these self-proclaimed alien abductees, it's not a question of whether aliens exist. It's more like, why me? For Inside Edition Digital, I'm Mara Montalbano.
Now, again, I'm going to give them credit where credit's due. They examined cases that proved to be mistaken identity. Then they covered some that they just don't have an answer to. Our buddy Matt Moniz talked about his abduction scenario in that clip. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by this in so many ways because of who's coming forward, what's being said, and the fact that, you know, we are taking a more open-minded look at these. Now, I personally, I saw something in the skies over Trout Lake, Washington. I cannot explain 15 years later. You can't convince me it was a balloon. It was, a laser grid. It was not. It was a floating, flying craft that was huge, and it was amazing. I saw things when I went back to that same ranch when we filmed the episode of Paranormal State there with the kids from A&E and Paranormal State. There's just too much going on in some of these locations to summarily dismiss them. Then, I also saw with my son driving in Minneapolis, as I'm looking, we saw the cylindrical cigar-shaped UFO. Both of us completely blown away by it until it tipped, and then we realized it was an airplane. I would have thought I could identify an airplane from any angle. But if it's at the right angle and it's tipped and the wings are not visible, and at that angle you can't see the tail fin, it looks like a large cylindrical metal object. And you're driving. Most people see that while they're out driving. So it's a quick flash and it's gone. And if the sun is catching it right, it gives it that glowing aspect. Luckily, we pulled over and watched this thing and then saw it fold back down as it came around the corner, if you will, and then we could see the wings. But I would have told you right then and there, if I'd only been able to glance up, I would have sworn to you that we saw a UFO. Since we launched this show in 2016, you and I have received calls on air and off air, emails from employees of the Minnesota airport, the MSP airport, who have cited things that defy explanation over the airport. Again, you think, why are we not engaging these things? What's really going on? I have no explanation. It's exciting as hell because they're kicking this up and we're getting closer. Just in what you've heard us play tonight, Tim, so far, is this exciting you at all that there is something beyond just maybe military secretive aircraft? Do you feel like we might be getting close to something extraterrestrial or interdimensional, ultradimensional, something out of the ordinary? Or do you still just maintain it's all secretive military craft?
Choose my words carefully here because I'm not ready to jump off the deep end. I'll put it that way. It's interesting. You know, when we were aboard the Jericho cruise and did the UFO summoning intention experiment, there were 3 balls of light out there that nobody out of the 60 to 70 some people that were on that side of the ship could explain. No, none of us could rationalize it.
And they would duck down into the waterline and come back up.
Yeah.
And we had ship officials with us.
Mm-hmm.
My son, who was stationed on USS Ronald Reagan at one point, was telling me, I don't know what we're looking at, old man, but this boat would have to be pitching at a crazy rate for our visual perspective to change to make that ball look like it's dipping into the ocean and coming out.
Right.
It's similar to the footage they're showing now of that UFO, the underwater submersible object or unidentified submersible object. That was wild.
And I even had people come up afterwards saying, okay, how did, because you have to understand the mind of a wrestling fan. Everything's a work. It's much like being a fan of magic. You're looking for how you did the trick. And you think you know how the trick is done. So afterwards, people kept saying, okay, how did you gimmick it to make it, you make that happen? And I said, we didn't do a thing. And a few people didn't believe it. And most people really did believe what they saw. There were a few that went away going, okay, you guys gimmicked this somehow to make it happen. And I said 100%, I'm one of the biggest skeptics in the world, and I don't know what I just saw out there. I really don't. With that in mind, I find these articles that are coming out and the fact that the U.S. government is opening up a little bit now to be intriguing. But I also, there's a part of me that enjoys but doesn't go off the deep end with conspiracy theories and says, why now? Why now do they choose to embrace this and feed us a little bit of this?
I think, in all reality, because now everybody's got cameras. There are cameras positioned on poles at every airport, they're capturing footage that they can't continue to deny. Up until the 21st century here, there was enough plausible deniability. Cameras are getting better. The grade of the cameras are getting better. There's more people witnessing in grander ways. I just think they're getting to the point where they cannot continue to deny. Roswell, listen, again, people might not remember this. Jesse Marcel Sr., who was one of the first on site, was the first one to be part of the press release, told by his superior officer, this is a down saucer, you talk to the press. He did that. This guy worked with the atomic bomb. He worked with military aircraft of all shapes and sizes. He knew what he was looking at. It wasn't balsa wood and aluminum foil and kids tape. So the fact that they maintained it, but they kept quiet, and Jesse Marcel retired, I think, a full bird colonel, tells you he wasn't summarily dismissed by the intelligence agencies as a nutbag. He wouldn't have continued to elevate. Neither would his son, Jesse Marcel Jr. Neither of them stayed quiet about it. So that I think that's compelling as well. Now, this next guy you and I are not big fans of, but the fact that he's talking and digging into this, I wanted to show this footage because, again, I think it's interesting audio. Washington Examiner's Tom Rogan reacts to UFOs seemingly capable of moving through the air and water. He did this on Tucker Carlson Tonight the other night. Let's go ahead and listen to that, thanks to Fox News.
We've interviewed a number of experts on the show, people familiar with footage in the possession of the U.S. military, who have said there is tape out there of unidentified flying objects descending from the sky and then disappearing into the ocean. Well, today, that video emerged. The Pentagon has just confirmed that the footage is real. You're seeing it now on your screen. It was taken by the Combat Information Center aboard the USS Omaha on July 15th, 2019, off the coast of San Diego. As far as we know, the UFO in question was never recovered. There was no material indicating a crash. More than that, we don't know. Tom Rogan is a Washington Examiner columnist, well-versed in the subject. He joins us tonight. Tom, what do you think we're looking at here?
Well, I think we may well be looking at a true unknown, which is to say intelligently controlled machinery that is not understood to be in the possession of the United States, China, or Russia, which are the three most advanced countries in terms of military aviation. And so, the video in and of itself is limiting what it can tell us, but I think it speaks to, as the Pentagon itself has admitted, this continuing trend of truly unexplained things coming into the public consciousness more than they have before.
If you listen to this with the sound up, you can hear the guys who are monitoring this video in real time gasp when it seems to disappear beneath the waves. So this kind of takes the weather balloon off the table or some meteorological phenomenon off the table. I mean, clearly we're looking at something that is, as you just put it, being intelligently controlled, and it's going underneath the ocean and then disappearing. I mean, we're sure that this could not be a foreign nation in control.
Yeah, that is yes, and that is why you see people like Senator Rubio leaning into the subject. The military Office of Naval Intelligence, which really leads the military effort researching this. There isn't anything that we have top secret information about what China or Russia have, or what we have at Area 51 that can do what these things do in terms of the variable performance. And I think specifically relevant to this video, in the coming months and years, an area which we will learn more about is the interaction of U.S. Navy submarines, nuclear ballistic missile submarines and attack submarines, picking up sonar contact of things moving at hundreds of knots under the water. And so there is a undersea dimension to this that the Navy has sort of pushed off to the side as the pilots talk more about their experiences. So there's a lot more to come out, I think, is the best way to put it.
Hundreds of knots underwater. I mean, I think all of us can imagine objects moving at incredible speeds in the air, maybe even approaching, the speed of light, potentially. But hundreds of knots underwater, I don't think most people can even digest that. And that's been recorded?
That's what I've heard from sources, very good sources, and that the Navy has the data. And one of the big things, Tucker, that I think as we move towards this Director of National Intelligence report, and I do know that the various agencies are actually taking that more seriously than people might expect, as is DNI. One of the things we're going to find is that over a period of decades, a lot of the data, a lot of the measurement of these things has been put off as technical aberration or essentially a data malfunction, because they didn't want to really admit that something very serious and special is going on.
I mean, some of this behavior challenges our understanding of physics, so I think this is going to change a lot of perceptions. Tom, I appreciate it. I hope we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Tucker.
That's crazy. Now, I'm going to jump on your side for this next statement, Tim.
All right.
The government keeps pretty good tabs on insurrections and warring factions, problems that may arise in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's safe to say we've been on some unstable ground for the last decade with China, Russia, and others.
Mm-hmm.
You've got what's going on in the Middle East right now.
Right.
Is the release of this information, these stories, these pieces of footage being leaked, part of a calculated release so that we can say, gosh, we don't know what that is, but boy, anybody that has that kind of power, that's something. Are we in essence flexing to the other powers around the United States, going, make sure you're paying a close attention to what these things have the capability of. Because if you cross a boundary, they're going to rain holy hell on you. I'm wondering if it's kind of a veiled threat to the rest of the world. And our government being the one releasing it, our government talking about it, if they really thought it was a threat. So I'm going with the concept that maybe it is our secret military efforts, and this is our way of putting the information out there to let the rest of the world know we will blow you out of the sky if you screw with us.
Oh, you're catching on. That's what I'm saying.
So I get that aspect.
Why now? Why is all this video coming out now?
Because there's a lot of tension, right? There's a lot of tension in the world. So like I said, I'm not totally off the deep end into the UFO. I will tell you, the things I saw in the sky in Trout Lake, Washington are a stone's throw away from a military base. So there is that. Most of these sightings are around military installations. Their abilities to shut down nuclear missile silos, pretty compelling. Now, couple that, Tim, with the fact that over the last few weeks, there's more and more intelligence coming out regarding this unseen weapon that's affecting people, right? This sonic weapon that has been tried out in the United States. Well, we would never try it out on our own people. Wrong. That's what every military has ever done since the beginning of time, right? And you try it out in certain areas to see how it would impact and influence. So I'm going to take that conspiratorial angle that coupled with, oh, isn't it interesting? Not only are these craft that can move at speeds and abilities nobody's ever seen before, but coupled with sonic technology that can disrupt people's brains, minds, bodies, bowels. I don't know that it's not some kind of FU to the rest of the world. I will say that is a definite part of my thinking now.
Now, I do want to point out something to you, okay? The footage that they're showing you, and keep in mind, they're mixing in a lot of reported UFO stories along with just brief footage from what they're saying is UAPs, okay? The footage in the Tucker Carlson story was a submersible going into the water, coming back up, okay? Now, that very well could be military technology. Okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's from the outer galaxy. It could be something that have been developed by our military. Something even, I'll take again from the Tucker Carlson story, something that's hovering, okay? Could be our technology. The clip that you've seen on every other show of the different shaped vehicle that's going at speeds that you just can't imagine and banks at an impossible angle, again, could be technology from our country. All of this could be military propaganda, as you've put it, that's being set up for a purpose. Think of it this way, Dave. You have, at this point, you have military threats around the globe, as you put it. You've got Russia, Iran, Korea, North Korea, put it that way, not South Korea, but North Korea. Russia, Iran, North Korea. You've got the Middle East conflict. That's just 4 spots in the world. And you have others that are bubbling, okay? Things are heating up and rising up. And now all of a sudden you've got this alien threat. So,
right, which beckons back to Reagan and Gorbachev talking about the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We should work together because the real threat may be out there.
Exactly. So
the global threat is what's going to bring people together.
Right. So either everybody looks to the skies and says, well, we're all one people, we should fight this enemy threat, or you just calmly say to people, well, we do have some of that technology over in Area 51. Not a lot of it, but we did get some of it. We have co-opted some of it into our technology. Not a lot of it, but some of it. So we've been aware of it for a while. We just have been sitting on it. We don't work with these guys, but we've used some of their stuff.
What if I go down the Dennis rabbit hole a little deeper? Okay. Mm-hmm. In the conspiratorial angle, that the footage, we can all agree, is not great. It's grainy footage with a black ball or a white speck.
Sure.
That doesn't give us any kind of compelling analytical information of size, scope, dimension.
Of course not.
So what if there is no craft, nothing is being sighted, but we're putting the threat out there, the possibility out there that we may have technology that can do this just to spook off the others? You know what I'm saying?
That's the other thing I wanted to bring up about this too, is you'd think the military does not have or does not possess as their, now keep in mind, they probably don't use high def cameras on, just typical surveillance, but do you think
in an area where you're seeing UFOs every day for 2 years, you'd think you'd step up the technology.
Right. You'd think they wouldn't have a backup surveillance camera that would be some sort of high def camera, whether it be 4K or 8K, that would be able to figure out definition, something that they could get a readout on what it is exactly that they're looking at. Do you think they're just going to take grainy footage and go, yeah, looks alien to me? I think there's a reason why you're getting the grainy footage. You're getting the grainy footage so you can't make out exactly what it is that's flying in the sky. Because if you can make it out, if you and I can make it out, then then the Russians can make it out. Then the Iranians can make it out. Then anybody else who wants to build that exact same weapon can look at it, can replicate it, and can use it for their own.
Yeah, so definitely something to consider. It's crazy. Now let's dip in. We've got a couple more actualities to play. This is another story that to me starts to pique and get my curiosity going. We're about to hear from James Clapper, the former director of National Intelligence. They play some of the audio from the Navy pilot as well, but there's a lot of backspeak. There's a lot of lawyer talk to me in this conversation. So let's go ahead. This is from CNN. Let's hear what James Clapper had to say.
Surface laptop runs Windows, so I can run on my favorite app.
That's the new Surface Laptop 4.
I also want to turn now to talk to you about UFOs, because a former Navy pilot gave an interview to CBS News in which he says flight crews observed UFOs off the Atlantic coast every day. Here's a clip from that.
So you're seeing it both with the radar and with the infrared, and that tells you that there is something out there.
Pretty hard to spoof that every day. Every day for at least a couple of years.
Wait a minute, every day for a couple of years?
Mm-hmm.
So next month, a government report is expected to be made public on the sightings of UFOs. As the former director of national intelligence, I think there have been a lot of theories about UFOs. What do you make of these revelations? What might this be? Have you seen any yourself? What do you make of this?
Well, first, I think it is kind of, there is logic to the intelligence community addressing this, since the intelligence community has a lot of practice of dealing with ambiguity and less than complete facts. And secondly, I think it's really important that whenever we witness such phenomenon, that it is recorded and documented for the future. When we may gather more information and have a better understanding of what's transpiring. Could there be life out there? Sure. As huge as the universe is, we really can't reject that possibility. So I think this is a good thing. The transparency. I expect this report will be filled with ambiguity as well. And people, depending on their leanings, will extract what they want out of this report.
how it always goes, right? Where there is ambiguity, people can pull what they want from it. But it does sound like it is, something that we haven't seen before, this type of transparency around this topic.
Yes, and I'm not sure why that is. The only reason for classification would be if there's some sensitive method that data relating to so-called UFOs was collected. But other than that, I don't know why we haven't been more transparent about it in the past, and I'm part of that crime, I guess. And my former capacities were, I didn't insist on more transparency with respect to this issue.
So fascinating. He admits that he was part of the problem, but I think it's interesting. He's like, look, right now it's in the hands of the intelligence agencies, which are great at ambiguity and dealing in less than complete facts. That's a pretty telling statement in itself. Yep. So, they're going to release this, but are you going to get the full report that you're expecting? I think he's setting us up for that's not going to happen. And why we're not being transparent, I think, you could take one of two ways. Again, as he said, you could read it one of two ways. Is he saying it like that because I don't know why we're not being more transparent? There are no UFOs? Or, why not just be open about it? They exist. It's part of who we are. Let's just move on. So it's I don't know. To me, that was a fascinating piece of audio to listen to and to hear coming from somebody who had that position at one point and has some intelligence. He is a great poker face. He does not let on either way to what he believes is truly taking place.
And nor should he. I mean, once you've had the position, you almost owe a debt, to the position.
Right. Agreed.
You're in a fraternity now. You're in a position where you owe to that office for the rest of your life. And heavy is the head that wears the crown. You have information that runs the country. And I know people will say, well, that's pretty melodramatic, Tim. It's not. There are things, I think, there's a reason why when presidents take over the nation, they start out with their natural hair color and come out gray. There are things
kind of like how we started our show.
Yeah, exactly. There are things that happen when you run the nation that will literally turn your hair gray, that you don't realize are that tough. It's a tough position. And I think that you don't want to see how the sausage is made. And I just think there are some things that just aren't touchy-feely about running this country.
Right.
And, you just, they do shoot horses, kids. I hate to tell you that. And that there are things about getting down and dirty and defending the country. And, that's just kind of how it is.
I will say this, though, talking to our friend Bill a couple weeks ago on the show and hearing his eyewitness account impresses me because, again, the guy has made a career working for military and public interests in engineering. He knows how things work. He cannot fathom what he saw.
And, I don't doubt Bill. Having known Bill for quite a few years, I don't doubt anything he's seen. I wouldn't question it. It's just a matter of, and I believe what he saw was a transport ship. I don't doubt that in this, and I'll take it back to this and I'll make it quick. We've known about the Yosemite supervolcano for decades. We know that thing is potentially it's Mount Vesuvius is what it is.
Well, on a grander scale, it's going to take out like 2/3 of our country if it goes.
Right. So, there are things on this earth. We are ticks on a dog's back when it comes to Mother Earth. And this has nothing to do with climate change. This just has to do with what nature is. We are a virus to Mother Earth. Humans are really we've overrun the planet. So eventually Mother Earth is going to shake us off.
There's got to be an escape plan. Yeah,
exactly. So I think there are people smarter than us who are in charge of this planet.
What?
Well, yeah.
People smarter than us? Speak for yourself.
I hate to tell you that, Dave. That have decided, you know what? And they have a lot of money. They've decided that, you know, some of it, and this is why, you know, like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk have publicly come out and said, you know what? I'm building a rocket and getting the hell out of here. I'm figuring out what is habitable.
Unfortunately, there's no, beaches resort on Mars.
True.
Or Uranus, right? So it's like,
true.
I'm building a rocket. Well, good for you. How long can you sustain? What's
right.
the game plan once you get up there?
That's the thing. Nobody's filled them in on what's a habitable planet and what isn't, and what's going to work and what isn't. But I think there are some people who are a little smarter than even them that might have it kind of figured out, or they're starting to figure out that maybe there are some things out there or some alternatives on how to do this thing. So they're getting ready for it. And one of those are these giant transport ships that people are seeing. And I believe Bill might have seen one of those giant transport ships.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
We'll keep digging at it. One last story before we take a break and go to Theater of the Mind and a myriad of other different stories and weird topics. The truth is out there. The U.S. must reveal secrets of the best ever UFO photo showing a 100-foot craft over Scotland after a UK cover-up, says an investigator. An infamous lost UFO photo should be released by the U.S. when intelligence agencies officially publish a much-anticipated report on the strange encounters. According to an investigator, Nick Pope, one of the world's leading experts on UFOs, who probed the phenomena for the Ministry of Defense, has urged the Pentagon to publish the so-called Calvine photo. Mr. Pope said that the Sun Online had told the Sun Online the photo is one of the most compelling pieces of UFO evidence he's ever seen. And he saw the image firsthand while working for the MOD. The photo, which was taken in 1990 and allegedly shows a 100-foot object hovering over Calvine in the Scottish Highlands, once hung on the wall of the UFO Investigations Unit in Whitehall. However, the photo was removed without a trace after a diplomatic row sprung up when UFO investigators at the MOD questioned the Americans about whether they were testing any secret prototype aircraft in the area. And since then, the stunning image, which is said to be unlike any other UFO photo, being crystal clear, taken in broad daylight and meticulously authenticated by defense officials, has remained under wraps ever since. Mr. Pope told the Sun Online he would hope to see the image finally released to the public as the U.S. becomes increasingly open in talking about UFOs. And we are now just weeks away from a report being released by the U.S. top intelligence body on the issue, with a 180-day deadline set in motion in December, which is set to take place here in June. It was hoped that the British government may have released the photo, as it is now well within the 30-year rule for declassification, but the UK dossier on the incident has reportedly been banned from release until at least 2072. So it may be on the Americans to take the initiative and release the photo, with Mr. Pope certain they have a copy of it in their archives. I hope we can get the Calvine photo back. I hope we find the U.S. government has a copy. I'm sure they do, and I hope they publish it in the report, as the MOD says it's either lost or under lock and key for another few decades, he told the Sun Online. So to me, this is another pretty big holy shit story, right? That there is a crystal clear photograph that exists.
Mm-hmm.
That there is images that we have that defy logic, but are they flown by little green men? That's still the breakdown of the story. Now, for all of the stories you've just heard, and this story, which has some of the photographs and the artist's reproduction of what the crystal clear UFO image looks like, they'll all be up at darknessradio.com. Click on the news tab and you'll find it there. When we come back, if they're out there, have they visited? We might have a story that'll intrigue you. Plus, Tim,
yeah,
Russia's going to clone an entire army of 3,000-year-old warriors. DC Comic Books, one of our favorites, is launching a Conjuring comic book series. And did the devil make him do it? Gruesome murder spree shines light on Satanic worship in Fall River, Massachusetts. That's just some of the stories we'll cover when we return, plus a brand new Theater of the Mind. You're listening to the best in paranormal podcasting. I'm Dave. That's Tim. This is the original. This is the bad boy of the paranormal. This is Darkness Radio. We're back. This is Darkness Radio. We have one more audio piece for Tim to play. This one a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, but not in my eyes. I think it's a fascinating what-if story that sheds some new light on an interesting aspect that we've covered on the show during the last 15 years. Many scientists have talked about this being a real possibility. What if planets have already sent us some of their star seed and they already exist on planet Earth? Let's listen to that story now.
What if I told you we discovered an alien species with an adaptable body, advanced intelligence, and astounding camouflage skills? Enter the octopus. Wait, what did you think I was talking about? Could these slithery ocean dwellers be from outer space? Where did they come from? And how did they get to Earth? This is What If, and here's what would happen if octopuses are aliens from outer space. Alright, it's time to put your tinfoil helmet on because today we're getting a little out there. Octopuses are as cool as they are mysterious. So mysterious that some scientists are putting the theory forward that they aren't even from our planet. Octopuses are incredibly intelligent creatures and are masters of disguises. They can use their color-changing cells to blend in with the environment, move their arms to impersonate other ocean species, and are excellent problem solvers. So what if they're so smart that they've pulled a fast one on all of us? What if they're really aliens and have only convinced us that they originated here on Earth?
It's genetics. Absolutely unearthly.
The theory goes that 500 million years ago, an icy meteorite carrying an alien life form fell to Earth. This life form? Fertilized octopus eggs. Mind blown. Case closed. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Okay, I can see you're skeptical, so let's go a little deeper. You're probably asking, how the heck is an alien life form going to survive in the cold reaches of space before getting to Earth? Well, here's the thing. Microbes, such as those seen in bacteria, are extremely tough. Microbes can thrive in temperatures as low as minus 18 degrees and can even be preserved in liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees. This means that they couldn't care less about the extreme pressures of space and, in theory, could float around for billions of years before hitting a planet. But if the octopus did crash land on Earth 500 million years ago, where did it come from? Well, we know the octopus is a water creature, so let's start there. Our bet is Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Europa has an icy exterior and might have a liquid ocean underneath. Seems like a cozy space for an interplanetary octopus, right? Could a massive asteroid have smashed into Europa 500 million years ago, resulting in huge chunks of debris being torn out into space? And if so, could some of that debris have held octopus eggs in it? The answer is, maybe. Call me Fox Mulder because I want to believe, but this is some really far out stuff. Is calling an octopus an alien the only way to explain them? I mean, we have plenty of weird creatures on Earth without extraterrestrial interference. In 2015, scientists were able to map the genome of the octopus. Did they find some surprises? Sure they did, but an alien origin story wasn't one of them. The most significant discovery was that their genes split off from squids about 135 million years ago, which is long after they allegedly crashed into Earth. So, could octopuses really be from outer space? Well, it's a fascinating theory, but as of today, it doesn't have the science to back it up. And even though they're not from outer space, it doesn't mean we can't still learn from them. But don't take our word for it. Ask award-winning environmental journalist and the director of the documentary My Octopus Teacher, Pippa Ehrlich. Join us on What If Discussed to take a deeper dive into the world of these fascinating creatures.
That's a cool story. And that video again up on the page, just looking at them, man, they are very alien in nature, just looking at them. And when you consider that they're seeing these USOs, these unidentified submersible objects, why wouldn't we believe that there's a possibility? Listen, you remember back in the day when we started the show, one of our guests talked about aliens being the grays that were once here, and dolphins. They have fingers. They have what shows that they were once land-dwelling mammals, but had to adapt and go to the oceans. So are the grays the remnants, or the dolphins the remnants of grays? Are the octopus from another planet? I mean, they certainly bandied this thought about in one of my favorite Star Trek movies, right?
Yeah.
The Voyage Home. And it is interesting. And it's, I don't know, cool concept, interesting little images, and again, a little bit fun on that one, but I thought we'd mention that. Speaking of fun, let's do it now, Tim. Well, that sounds a little rude, doesn't it? Let's not do it, but it's time now. You wanted it, you got it, from our good friend Jason Offutt. It's time to turn down the lights and pull up the covers, because this is a brand new edition of Theater of the Mind. This is a brand new edition of Theater of the Mind. This is a real-life account from Jason Offutt. Gimme shelter.
Driving home from a Friday night shift at work, my car's cruise control set on 55. I drove by a road sign I'd driven by hundreds of times. It read Oric, 5 miles. Just as I went by, the Rolling Stones' Gimme Shelter came on the radio. It was perfect. I lived in Oric, Missouri at the time, and Gimme Shelter was not only my favorite Stones tune, it was also 4 minutes 37 seconds long, which would last me all the way home. And then my drive fell out of reality. A pull on the car engine snapped me out of my road hypnosis. It took me a few seconds to realize that pull was the cruise control trying to keep the speed steady up a hill. The trouble was, there were no hills between that road sign and my turnoff. Looking out the window didn't help. A thick fog had enveloped the car, and I could barely see the dotted line on the road. I slowed and drove up 2 more hills before I saw a light piercing the fog. Turning onto gravel toward the light, I found myself in the parking lot of a Jehovah's Witness church, and I knew where I was. I was 5 miles on the other side of my turnoff. As I sat in the parking lot, trying to figure out how I missed the exit, I heard something I couldn't believe. Gimme Shelter still played on the radio. It continued to play for another minute and a half. After I calmed, I put the car in gear, pulled back onto the highway, and went home. The fog quickly dissipated. I'd driven 10 miles in 3 minutes at 55 miles an hour. That wasn't possible. What happened to me?
Thank you, Jason Offutt. Always a pleasure. I'm sure one of his shows will be showing up in the Darchives if it isn't already. We appreciate that story. Fascinating story. We've got more stories coming up through the weeks. Keep sending us in your Theater of the Mind stories. Love hearing them. Dave@darknessradio.com. Send us your stories. Write them as a narrative. We will be using them. Or do like Jason Offutt and record your voice telling the story. Send it in, and Tim will add music and sound effects just like that. Great job, by the way, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Tim, let's get into some strange news. Listen, man, we're already over almost an hour and a half. I've still got a handful of stories to get to. We're going to skip Parashare this week, folks, because I think this has been a fascinating enough show as it is. We had a great theater of the mind. You've heard, some actual Parashare stories involved in these news stories with the guy that saw the UFO in 1969, Patton Oswalt's dad, and more. So we've got some of those already interwoven, but let's get back to the news, shall we? Men's Health reports this next story, Tim. Russia is planning to try to clone an army of 3,000-year-old Scythian warriors. When you hold a job like defense minister of Russia, you presumably have to be bold and think outside the box to protect your company from enemy advances. And with his latest strategic idea, cloning entire army of ancient warriors, that's what Sergei Shoigu, I don't know if I'm saying that right, is certainly taking a big swing at in an online session of the Russian Geographical Society last month. Shoigu, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, suggested using the DNA of 3,000-year-old Scythian warriors to potentially bring them back to life. Yes, really, folks. It's not a made-up story in the Weekly World News. This is real. First, some background. The Scythian people, who originally came from modern-day Iran, were nomads who traveled around Eurasia between the 9th and 2nd centuries BC, building a powerful empire that endured for several centuries before finally being phased out by competitors. Now, 2 decades ago, archaeologists uncovered the well-preserved remains of the soldiers in a kurgan or burial mound in the Tuva region of Siberia. Because of Tuva's position in southern Siberia, much of it is permafrost, meaning a form of soil or turf that always remains frozen. It's here where the Scythian warrior saga grows complex, because the frozen soil preserves biological matter better than any other kinds of ground. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu knows this better than anyone because he's from Tuva. Now, of course, we'd like very much to find the organic matter, and I believe you understand what would follow that, Shoigu told the Russian Geographical Society. It would be possible to make something of it. If not Dolly the sheep, in general, it will be very interesting. Shoigu subtly, not subtly, Tim. I'm trying to use all the letters since it's in the word. Shoigu subtly suggested going through some kind of human cloning process. But is that even possible? To date, no one has cloned a human being. Bullshit. But scientists have successfully executed the therapeutic cloning of individual kinds of cells and other specific gene editing work. And of course, there are high-profile examples of cloning pretty complex animals. Earlier this year, for example, scientists cloned an endangered U.S. species for the first time. A black-footed ferret whose donor had been dead for more than 30 years. So, why are humans still off the menu? Blame a technical problem with the most common form of cloning, which is called nuclear transfer. In this process, a somatic cell, like a skin or organ cell with a specific or specified established purpose in the body, has its nucleus carefully lifted out. Then this nucleus is deposited in an egg cell with its nucleus carefully removed. It's like a blank template waiting to have a new nucleus swapped in. Now, from a technical perspective, cloning humans and other primates is much more difficult than in other mammals, the National Institute of Health's National Human Genome Research Institute says on its website. One reason is that 2 proteins essential to cell division, known as spindle proteins, are located very close to the chromosomes in primate eggs. Consequently, removal of the egg's nucleus to make room for the donor nucleus also removes the spindle proteins, which will interfere with cell division. You might remember spindle proteins from your mitosis diagrams back in high school biology, and while there's a relatively easy way around this problem, it's almost moot when cloning humans is considered extremely taboo in most of the world. In some places, it's explicitly illegal. Curiously, the U.S. hasn't banned the gene editing of embryos, but the NIH doesn't fund research on the practice, and places like in vitro clinics aren't allowed to do any non-U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved manipulation of embryos under any circumstances. That example starts to illustrate why the problem is so complex, because a lot of cutting-edge genetic medicine is walking right up to the line without crossing it. Making laws that address full human embryo cloning then requires a jigsaw puzzle of careful language that doesn't rule out these kinds of therapeutic cloning. But let's say Russia does ignore all this legality in favor of Shogu's big plans, Tim.
Okay.
In that case, scientists would have to develop a way to lift out the human nucleus without damaging the cell beyond repair. So scientists have cloned certain monkeys, Mickey, Davy, Michael, and Peter, Tim, for the next generation.
Wow.
That's right. They may be coming or cloning to your town. No, that's not true. But they have cloned certain monkeys, so primates are at least hypothetically still in the mix, despite the spindle proteins. But the success rate, even for non-primate clones, is already very low. It took Dolly the sheep's research team how many attempts, Tim, to get a viable embryo?
Was it 150? Is it higher?
Uh-huh.
350.
277. But you were closing in on it. Okay. Had I given you another 15, 20 years, you probably would have got it eventually. And what if all of that went perfectly? Well, the Scythians were powerful warriors and gifted horsemen. But scientists or the Kremlin must carefully monitor a cloned baby version of a deceased adult warrior for illness and other prosaic childhood problems. Who will raise these children? I will, Tim. Mine are all growing up and moving out. How about you? You and me. We'll just be responsible for the upcoming wave of next Russian warriors.
I hear they have a little problem with attitude.
Shoigu may envision a future race of extremely capable fighters, but that's at least 20 years away with an added coin flip on nature versus nurture. After all, the Scythian warriors didn't have plumbing, let alone smartphones. This will be a whole new world to them. Well, I don't think you're going to get their memories. It's not like you're cloning them, bringing them back to life in their consciousness, or is it? Maybe they will. What if it turns out that they unearthed like the cowards who that wasn't their burial ground? They like hid there during the war and something fell on them. So we end up cloning a whole group of like, I'm not going out there. You go out there. Doesn't that sound like a Monty Python movie waiting to be made?
It kind of does.
Sadly, we have to clone two of the members to bring them back for it, but I'm still interested.
This is kind of bringing me back to the swordfish discussion from True Crime Tuesday.
Yes, very Acme, right? Wile E. Coyote, maybe he'll loan us the cloning catalog from Acme.
Yeah.
Comic books, Tim and I have loved them since we were wee children. We still do. We're collectors. DC is launching horror comics for Conjuring fans who love to read. I love that they kind of take that step, for the ones that can read. DC has taken a major decision on a new addition to their comic book line. Recently, the studio has launched a new horror printing comic book, and it is none other than The Conjuring. The new DC comic line books take off with the scariest story around the world, which is none other than The Conjuring. The first horror comic of DC is known as The Conjuring the Lover. The story will definitely revolve around the stories related to paranormal activities, which are investigated by the world-famous paranormal investigators named Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, DC Studios' superheroes comic collection are world-famous, but now DC has thought of adding a new dimension to their comic line and finally launching something in the horror genre. It has decided to launch the first installment of its horror series, and the most famous of which, being the Conjuring franchise, has tied up a partnership with them. The Conjuring the Lover will consist of a total of 5-book series. The next comic installment in the line is The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, and it consists of the story of The Conjuring 3. The comic is also penned by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, who also wrote the script for the film The Conjuring 2, and comic writer Rex Ogle is also another writer who will work on the completion of the book. The Conjuring the Lover is designed by the renowned Gary Brown, and the main front cover art is from from the very famous Bill Sikowitz. I got to tell you, though, Tim, I'm already not a fan because I don't care for the cover art. Have you seen the cover art for this?
No, I haven't.
And it's kind of what turned me off on a lot of comics after a while, because they all started to go to this kind of artsy fartsy look. Here, I'm going to shoot it over to you.
Okay.
See the black and white side? The color one's not as bad, but I have a feeling the art's going to be more like the black and white side.
Oh, okay. Yep.
You see what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, I just don't care for it. That's why I didn't like the Walking Dead comic books. I didn't like that janky black and white crap.
Oh, okay.
I have a hard time with that. I want it to be rich and textured and layered and good colors. You know, I wasn't even really a big fan of the Dark Knight comic book series. I love the story.
So you don't like the Batman black and white?
No, I really haven't. I don't know why it is. Maybe I don't know. I can't explain it. The story was okay. I want my art to look a certain way. And I'm trying to remember who the artist was that started drawing Batman real kind of long and lanky and I don't know. He looked more like a nightmare version of Batman. And I can't think of the artist's name, but that started getting me off some of the titles. I don't know.
Was this like when we were younger? Or is this?
Yeah, 90s. Yeah.
Oh, 90s.
Yeah. But it's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
We're not just a comic book show. We're an all-out war of a show that talks about everything. Did the devil make him do it? A gruesome murder spree shines light on satanic worship in Fall River, Massachusetts. Sex for sale, satanic cults, addiction, and a streak of brutal murders of young women, too gruesome to fathom, are all brought to light in a 4-part docuseries, Fall River, from Blumhouse Television, and premiering May 16th on Epix. So it's out and available right now, almost 90 years after Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her stepmother 40 whacks in Fall River. Actually, it was much less than that. Another macabre killing spree hit the quaint, historic New England city. It began on October 13th of 1979 when the naked body of Doreen Levesque, a homeless 17-year-old girl, was found under the high school bleachers. She was tied up with fishing wire, her head and face crushed with a rock. And as private investigator Chris Hayes puts it, the girl had a baseball. Let me try that again. Not a baseball, Tim. It's a totally different sport. The girl had a baseball bat shoved inside of her. In the 1960s, 70s, and the early 80s, drug addiction rates among juvenile females increased 6 times more than those of men, the series notes, and they often turned to sex working to support this habit. It was later determined that Levesque was one of those statistics. It was rumored that her murder, was a ritualistic, barbaric killing tied to a satanic cult that existed among prostitutes and pimps in Fall River, where women's souls were offered to the devil as human sacrifice. The cult leader, a sadistic pimp named Carl Drew. There was a lot of fear on the streets of Carl, the retribution that was going to be involved if anybody spoke. Thomas Joachim, I don't know how do you say it, Joaquim? Joachim? Yeah, mm-hmm. Thomas Joachim. I don't know, my head can't wrap around that word when I see it. A former detective with the Fall River Police Department said the name Robin Murphy, a pimp wannabe at the time when Drew ruled the streets, popped up daily during the police investigation. Together, they controlled much of that trade and prevented others from doing it. Another young sex worker, Karen Marsden, was caught in the middle of their fierce competitiveness. Police questioned her as a potential witness to the Levesque murder, but she refused to identify the killer and refused to offer the witness protection that was offered to her. She was reported missing the following day. The details of what happened to her are as horrifying as it can get. As further evidence of a satanic ritual pours out, Doreen Levesque, Robin Murphy, and Karen Marsden were all tied to Carl Drew. Carl used Satanism to control the prostitutes who worked for him. Drew was subsequently tried for Marsden's murder, convicted at trial, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But there's a shocking twist to this already twisted tale. It took about 4 years for Blumhouse and executive producer James Buddy Day to pull the ambitious docuseries together, not only interviewing the detectives who investigated the case and friends of the victims, but also talking with Drew and Murphy. It took me years to really understand what happened, Day told the Wrap. He had first read about the case in a New York Post story and later on Drew's website where he claimed his innocence. Really? Somebody that is in jail for murder claiming innocence, Tim?
No.
I was intrigued and I reached out to him and he wrote me back right away. I wrote him a letter and then I started talking to him. Day asked Drew if he had files about his case, and if so, where were they? Drew pointed him in the direction of his girlfriend at the time, who Day was actually able to track down. Turns out she still had the files. We went down to Fall River and went into her basement and took out these boxes of files and went to Kinko's to have them digitized, Day said, adding there was also cassette tape interviews with the witnesses among the papers. I just started going through all this stuff over a year, and it wasn't hard to see Carl suffered an injustice, that he really didn't have anything to do with the murders that came to light pretty early on. You could literally just go into the Fall River Superior Court and read the trial transcripts, 11 volumes, Day went on, no one that reads those trial transcripts will come away thinking Carl Drew was guilty, despite what the jury said. Maybe it's not that difficult to see that Carl didn't have much to do with these murders, but they'd opened the door to, like, well, what really did happen. And that was really kind of the journey that we wanted to go on, kind of drilled down the pit. Now, James Buddy Day and Blumhouse brilliantly told this story of town rattled by crime and caught in the throes of satanic panic. Michael Wright, president of Epic, said, "This series uncompromisingly seeks justice for the vulnerable who fell victim to the dangerous surroundings and closure to those who have gone for so many years without it. Fall River does more than chronicle the sensational murders that beset this town, but gives a face and a voice to the marginalized victims, women who, because they were sex workers, were not given the care and attention warranted during the investigation into their deaths." That's what Mary Lissow, EVP Alternative and Non-Scripted Programming from Blumhouse Television, had to say. Over the course of filming, we uncovered aspects of the investigation that were previously unknown. New evidence that 41 years later bring us closer to the truth of what really happened to these women. Fall River debuted on May 16th on Epix. Episodes 2 through 4 premiere the following 3 Sundays. So check that out. Sounds good. I want to see that. I'll have this article up because it's got a trailer for that. You can check that out as well. So go to darknessradio.com, click on the news tab to find all the stories there.
I'm going to throw 2 names at you, and you tell me if they sound familiar. Norm Brayfogle or Kelly Jones. Kelly Jones had the long-eared Batman with the...
Yes,
yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Yep, those were the Batman artists. You are correct. Those are the ones that ruined comic books for me forever. Now, they just got... It started getting weird in the 90s and early 2000s. Some of the art just got real basic, and I didn't care for it.
Okay.
All right. This article sounds interesting to me. How the pineal gland became an obsession for both spiritualists and sci-fi writers. The pineal gland, a reddish-gray pine cone-shaped part of the brain, is unremarkable at first glance. It's about 1/3 of an inch long and tucked deep in the brain near the center and between both hemispheres. Yet, it's captured a surprising amount of cultural attention. In the 1998 film adaptation of Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the extract of a pineal gland is said to turn you into something out of a goddamn medical encyclopedia. The 2019 science fiction film Synchronic. I don't think I'm saying that right either. Words are hard today. Synchronic? Yes. Focused on a drug that uses a pineal gland to alter how we experience time. H.P. Lovecraft's story From Beyond featured a mad scientist who invented a pineal gland stimulating machine to allow humans to perceive other planes of reality. That's a cool, freaky movie if you've never seen it. There's a cottage industry of spiritualism books that focus on the pineal gland. So if the pineal gland is neither a vessel for time travel nor multiverse encounters, what explains the science fictional and spiritual obsession over this part of our endocrine system? And how did it gain a reputation for being a neurological tabula rasa? Fancy big words, Tim. This is what happens when I read science stories. That requires knowing a little about what the pineal gland actually does do. So tune in, folks. Here we go. For those of you that have talked about the third eye and have always spoken about it as though you understand it, you probably have no clue. Let's take a good look at what it truly is. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. The pineal gland's main function involves a hormone called melatonin, which helps you sleep and maintain healthy circadian rhythms. Most vertebrate animals have a pineal gland, and they are widely considered to be essential parts of the biological machinery that enable us to sleep, as Dr. Gianluca Tosini of Morehouse School of Medicine told Salon by email. Melatonin is also essential to other aspects of human health as it regulates important physiological functions, such as blood pressure and insulin sensitivity. He also noted that its structure is pretty consistent among most species. The most striking difference among the different species is that in non-mammalian vertebrates, the pineal gland is directly photosensitive and possesses a circadian clock that directly regulates melatonin synthesis, the main product of this gland, Tosini explained. In mammals, the pineal gland is not directly photosensitive, and the production of melatonin is under control of the circadian clock located in the brain. This is all interesting to be sure, but none of it explains why the pineal gland is associated with the metaphysical. Now, to understand that, we have to go back in time, Tim. Here we are in the 17th century, where French-born philosopher René Descartes argued that it was the principal seat of the soul, Tim. He based that assertion on the, or assertion, not assertion. Boy, words is hard. He based that assertion on the anatomical features he perceived in the gland. Many of his assumptions turned out to be wrong, even based on the medical knowledge which existed at the time. And the fact that philosophy, Tim, words are hard and harder as this day is going on.
Isn't a philosophical one of those things that you eat a pita out of?
No, that's a falafel. Tim.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. All right. So many of his assumptions were wrong, even based on the medical knowledge which existed at that time. And the fact that philosophically he was inclined to believe that the mind and body were fundamentally separate entities. Other philosophers held that they were one and the same, and therefore that there is no soul. So Descartes needed to explain how the soul connects to the body. There was one feature of the pineal gland that particularly stood out to him in this respect. The fact that it was unpaired. I cannot find any part of the brain except this, which is not double, Descartes wrote. Since we only see one thing with two eyes and hear only one voice with two ears, and in short have never more than one thought at a time, it must necessarily be the case that the impressions which enter by the two eyes or the two ears, and so on, unite with each other in some part of the body before being considered by the soul. As he added later that year, since it is only solid part in the whole brain, which is single, it must necessarily be the seat of the common sense, i.e. of thought, and consequently of the soul, for one cannot be separated from the other. It's like he was right here reading to you, huh, Tim?
I can only guess.
Yeah. Scientists today, not surprisingly, reject that belief that the mind somehow exists independently of the body. I don't think that's true. I do believe the mind and body are two different things, man. I believe that, but that's me.
Now, if you were a metaphysical person, you would believe that mind, body, and spirit are all one.
Well, they are, but the consciousness exists outside. The mind, I believe, exists outside of the body and inside simultaneously. I'm Dave Schrader, and I endorse this conversation. Anyway, he was not the only major philosopher to locate significance in the pineal gland. Founder of a religion known as Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky argued that the pineal gland is that which the Eastern occultists called Devaka, the divine eye, or the third eye. To this day, it is the chief and foremost organ of spirituality in the human brain. She specifically praised Descartes, arguing that unscientific as this may appear in our day of exact learning, Descartes, I don't know the name, Descartes, was yet far nearer the occult truth than those who criticized his theories. For the pineal gland, as shown, is far more connected with soul and spirit than with the physiological senses of man. Ironically, there is some science behind the idea that the pineal gland is a third eye, although the truth is more anodyne than the loftier metaphysical hypotheses. It's a lot of big words, Tim. The pineal gland is present in most vertebrae, while the parietal eye is only present in some lizards, the Totora, some frogs, and salamander, Tosini explained to Salon. The parietal eye is also present in some fish, lampreys, and shark. The parietal eye is a highly organized photoreceptive structure with a well-defined lens, cornea, and retina. The role of the parietal eye is not well defined, but it may be involved in the orientation and perhaps in detecting light for synchronization of daily rhythms. So it's an interesting deal. Plus, you've got the DMT gland and all of that. So they think that it all kind of works in perfect concert with one another to open your consciousness and spirituality, bringing those two parts of our existence together. Yeah. Here's another story you'll be able to find right up on our website at darknessradio.com underneath the news tab. So the headline reads, Kentucky woman takes photo at Waverly Hills and captures a ghostly image. This comes from our friends at 99.5 WKDQ, the king of Dairy Queen. No? It says in here, several years ago, a medium came to Evansville and wanted to give me a reading over the phone. That's according to Leslie Morgan, the author of this article. Although I was very skeptical at first, she gave me some interesting insights about spirits that are always around me. She mentioned a woman and 2 men. One of the men was quiet and says nothing to her. The other 2 were arguing about who I wanted to hear from. It made me smile because she was describing the personalities of my 3 grandparents to a T. Ever since my mom passed away, I've had moments when I feel her with me. While we were in Gatlinburg waiting for a table, I overheard a voice talking to the server. Her voice sounded just like my mom, and it was exactly something she would have said. I was overcome with emotion and felt her arms around me. Maybe it's because I am open to hearing, seeing, and feeling things like this and allow them to happen to me. Well, my openness to the paranormal is exactly why my husband won't take me to the notoriously haunted Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. He jokingly says he's afraid I'll bring someone or something home with me. I'm not sure he's joking, though. I do feel like if I went there, I would definitely see or feel something. Now, my Facebook friend Maggie unexpectedly captured this photo at Waverly. It is a remarkable vision of a ghostly image moving past the doorway. You can see the image of a leg and a shoe. If you look closely to the far left of the back window, you can see a smaller image coming around the outside corner. And I can. It's weird. The foot is like so solid and coming about mid-calf, or not even, maybe about a couple inches above the ankle. It's all very clear. And then all the rest is this kind of black humanoid blur, if you will, Tim. Won't. That's how it looks. It's interesting. 2 reasons why this photograph gives me a sense of peace and happiness. The first is the fact that the ghostly image, it appears, have shown themselves to us, whether on purpose or not. The image is there in Maggie's photo. Secondly, to think that once we pass on in the afterlife as the smaller image in the photo, we walk with our loved ones through time and space, so we're never alone. Aww. That's sweet. We'll have that article up so you can go check out that picture. Let me know what you think. Just a couple stories left, Tim. Big news coming up. Our final story is big news in the paranormal entertainment world.
Okay.
I don't know how big news this is, but Machine Gun Kelly has experienced paranormal phenomena, Tim, at Megan Fox's home.
Well, I heard about him contacting his dad who passed away. That was a while back.
Well, Machine Gun Kelly says he can't sleep when he stays overnight at his girlfriend's house, Megan Fox, but not precisely for the reasons the rest of the world might imagine. Since the actress moved into her new home, he has witnessed paranormal phenomena, such as doors that close on their own while they're sleeping with no blast of air to blame, and it's not his imagination. On one occasion, Megan called him very upset to explain that she had locked herself in her room because there's an intruder in the house, but when he came running to her aid, they found no one. I had a gun to make sure everyone was safe, and I went around the house with the gun, and then we realized that what we needed was a Ghostbuster. I was not equipped to deal with that enemy. Of that, we realized later that we were looking for a culprit that did not exist, he revealed in the program of Ellen DeGeneres. That's the way it's written, Tim. The program of Ellen DeGeneres. That's a weird way of writing it. In reality, the musician is convinced that his own mansion is also haunted, although those presences with which he lives do not bother him as much as those that hang around his girlfriend's house. Everyone who comes and stays past 7 in the afternoon says, yeah, there's definitely something in your kitchen. But I've come to realize that they are just like high-level ghosts. They're always making sandwiches or washing dishes. They only do things in the pantry or the fridge, so sometimes I just thank them. He's got ghosts that make him sandwiches and clean up?
I guess so, yeah.
Jesus, it's good to be the king.
I guess so, yeah. It's good to be famous, yeah.
Well, if Machine Gun Kelly and Megan Fox's houses aren't enough for you, Tim, Joan Rivers' luxurious Upper East Side Manhattan penthouse apartment is back on the market for just $38 million.
No, is that it?
For a big baller like you, Tim, that should be no problem. The luxurious Manhattan apartment where the iconic comedian Joan Rivers spent her last years is now back on the market for a minimal of just $38 million. The eccentric comedy legend lived in the Upper East Side Manhattan penthouse for 28 years before passing away at 81. Wow, in 2014 already, man. That's 8 years ago. That's crazy.
Yep.
7, 8. Something like that. The apartment was sold in 2014 for $28 million, but it's back on the market with a $38 million listing from Dolly Lens Real Estate. $10 million in 7 years. Not a bad increase, I would say.
Housing market is hot right now.
Yeah, the penthouse is situated above one of the finest limestone sheathed mansions, according to the official listing, with the apartment said to be just steps away from Fifth Avenue. Architect Horace Trumbauer designed the apartment in the neo-French classic style, blah, 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 shit nobody gives a hell about. Let's get to the important part. The 5,200 square foot apartment, 5,200 square foot apartment, Tim, that's 2,000 square feet more than my 4 or 5 bedroom house.
Mm-hmm.
It featured 11 rooms, including 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, a ballroom, and a library, among many other amenities. There's a spacious living room and blah, 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 master bedroom, blah, 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 blah. Penthouse was featured in a 2009 episode of Celebrity Ghost Stories, where Rivers herself began by stating she never believed in the paranormal until she moved into that apartment. She believed that the apartment itself was haunted by the ghost of a woman named Mrs. Spencer, the niece of financier J.P. Morgan, who had previously lived there. Neighbors had told Rivers that they had noticed apparitions in the ballroom and grand staircase, though Rivers found a way to make the hauntings stop. She ultimately found an old portrait of Mrs. Spencer and decided to hang it up in the lobby, which caused the paranormal activity to come to an end. So there you have it. And our final piece of news is here, Tim.
All right.
For paranormal fans, an OG show is back again, Tim. Reincarnated on a new network with new faces. Ghost Hunters is returning on Discovery Plus with old, familiar faces, Tim. Ghost Hunters is coming back, but not that Ghost Hunters. The original Ghost Hunters, but not the original Ghost Hunters, per se. But actually, Ghost Nation, just now as Ghost Hunters. Confusing for you, Tim?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But some of the other ghost hunters might show up, maybe. If that sounds as confusing as a paranormal investigator trying to break down exactly why ghosts can walk through walls and slam doors, we totally understand. But let's break it down for you here. Discovery Plus announced today that the streaming service has given the green light to a revival of the series. It started it all when it comes to paranormal reality programs, Ghost Hunters. Well, that's not necessarily true. Most Haunted and Dead Famous were out there before that, but I digress. Anyway, original team leader Jason Hawes and Steve Gonsalves, Dave Tango, and Sherry D. Benedetti are taking back the paranormal reins in an epic haunted location. Discovery Plus wrote in a press release, and don't be surprised to see some familiar faces and special guests join the team on the hunt in this all-new version of the hit series. So, while all 4 cast members had previously been seen on Ghost Hunters, we'll get to that in a bit, they're most recently been on the cast of Travel Channel's Ghost Nation, which just aired its 2nd season on both the network and on Discovery Plus. Hawes, Gonsalves, and Tango started Season 1 with Dee Benedetti joining them in Season 2. Hawes is the co-founder of the Atlantic Paranormal Society, also known as TAPS, which was featured in the original Ghost Hunters series on Sci-Fi from 2004 to 2016. TAPS co-founder Grant Wilson starred on the program as well. Gonsalves was a cast member throughout the program's entire run, with Tango joining in 2005, Dee Benedetti joining in 2016. Now, along the way, numerous other investigators took part in the series, with many going off into spin-offs of their own into different paranormal series. Grant Wilson left the original Ghost Hunters back in 2012, but he returned to host a new iteration of the program on A&E back in August of 2019. He led a cast of all new investigators, while Hawes, Tango, and Gonsalves debuted their Ghost Nation program on Travel Channel in October of 2019. When we broke the news a few months ago that Ghost Hunters wasn't coming back to A&E, it appeared that that was the end of the franchise. But you can't keep a good ghost down. Pilgrim Media Group produced the original Ghost Hunters run as well as the Wilson-led revival and will produce the new version as well. Ping Pong Productions produced Ghost Nation. Fans are obsessed with the paranormal and unexplained hub on the new streaming platform, said Matt Butler, general manager of Travel Channel. Bringing back Ghost Hunters with their favorite cast members is a thrill, and fans who want to remember why the show is a classic and watch seasons from the original series, they're now available on Discovery Plus. The 13 one-hour new episodes will begin streaming later this year. So welcome back to the OGs of the paranormal realm. Ghost Hunters is back on the air on Travel Channel and Discovery Plus, Tim. And that's it. We're done. A show well over 2 hours. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did, bringing it to you. Fascinating stories, amazing news. What do you guys think of all this UFO prattle? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, dave@darknessradio.com. Are we here? Is it about to be disclosed? Are we about to have the lid lifted off the UFO realm and find out the truth? Or is it nothing more than Tim's boring version of it just being our own craft that we created, blah, blah, blah.
Well, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Well, that's what they say, Groucho. That's it for today, folks. Thanks a lot for tuning in and being a part of the show. We will be back tomorrow, Thursday on the show, Tim. We've got a hell of a program lined up. Are you ready for this, Tim?
I hope so.
Darkness Radio presents A Knock in the Attic, true ghost stories and other spine-chilling paranormal adventures with John Russell. That's tomorrow on the program. And tomorrow night, we're back with our live video stream on our Darkness Radio platforms, social media platforms, and over on our Darkness Radio YouTube page. It starts at 9 p.m. Central, sharp. Make sure you're there. You don't want to miss out on another great behind-the-scenes informational interview. You can watch the video live and be a part of it with us, interact with us on Thursday night, or for those of you that like to just listen to these dulcet tones come through your iPods, earpads, whatever you've got that you're listening to us through on your podcast device, then make sure you tune in Friday to hear the audio from that show. That's Tim. I'm Dave. This is the best in paranormal podcasting. You've been listening to Darkness Radio.